Welcome inside the debut episode of our new podcast here as part of WV Sports Now. We're going to be calling this the Mountaineer Report. Mike Asti, Ethan Bock, your usual members of WV Sports Now, and we are going to be talking some West Virginia Mountaineers. Obviously, right now, getting into fall camp with the new season on the horizon. Basketball on a foreign trip as they have been practicing and they're getting together for a new era of Mountaineer basketball, and the rest of the Mountaineer sports scene also gearing up for new years, new seasons, etc. We're going to touch on all of that here on this show. So this won't touch on anything else. This is not going to be like Mic Drop, my show, or anything else that many of us may do outside of this network. This will be a WVSN property and will be called Mountaineer Report. And on this debut episode, we have fall camp happening today as we release this debut episode for you. It will be the open of fall camp. We won't be able to see practice today, but we'll be able to talk to Neil Brown and hear from him on a feels like a long freaking off season, even though there's been polarizing commentary on Garrett Green, on Neil Brown. He has a contract extension now. Players are changing numbers. Players are now joining the team from major conference programs. They're able to retain most of the squad from 2023. Many fans think this team can contend for a Big 12 title, while others think, okay, maybe pump the brakes. It's a new era in the Big 12 college football with a 12-team playoff. Neil Brown talking about already how that opens up a path, and it does. There's a clear path now. You win the conference, you get in. That clear path never existed, which is why we've always had debates. I'm sure we are still going to have those debates at the end of the college football season, but nonetheless, a new season is here, and it really is a dawning of a new era in college football in general. He's Ethan Bock. I'm Mike Asti. And as I said, it's fall camp, which really, to me, especially covering it, means a new season. This is really the end, the bookmark end of the offseason. So, Ethan, with fall camp now here, outside of seeing players wearing new numbers, what are you looking to see? What are you looking at? What are you going to watch for with fall camp now happening for the Mountaineers?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it pretty much all off season. It was a pretty boring off season for West Virginia,
A little bit,
and probably for the best for Neil Brown. Especially with those first couple seasons, it seemed like the fan base would get a little emotional if some players left, and obviously the win results weren't there originally.
Yeah.
But now coming off a 9-win season, Neil Brown has the opportunity to keep that momentum going, especially bringing back a lot of contributing players from last season. So, and you've touched about it, the new era of college football or just college athletics in general. It's going to take a little while to get used to these Pac-12 schools being in the other three conferences, and but just specifically of West Virginia, it's the fall camp's going to be interesting to see who's stepping up per se. Like mostly the freshmen. It seems like Trey Lathan last year, CJ Johnson the year before. It seems like West Virginia always has a group of freshmen that step up, even in conference play.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a key to see if they can continue their momentum from last season.
And they relied on freshmen in 2023. I mean, Traylon Ray, true freshman, kind of under the radar, under Rodney Gallagher as a top recruit. He ended up becoming the stud receiver. Jaheim White, of course, a freshman sensation. You mentioned CJ the year before. Jaheim was that guy in 2023. So you almost have to figure, Ethan, that in order for this team to be successful, and we've seen this throughout history, certainly recent history, as you detailed, in successful years for the football program, really either way, a freshman or two has to step up. They need it. Now, they have added more major conference players this year via transfers than maybe in years past. Now, last offseason, they did add Colt Taylor and Beanie Bishop. Obviously, Beanie Bishop became a consensus All-American. Who knows if that's going to happen again? That was a transfer as a consensus All-American, only the 13th in program history, consensus-wise. So that's a high bar, but Garnet Hollis, Jaheim Joseph, Justin Robinson. I'm looking at some of these receivers too, because I think one major difference for this team, especially offensively, is the depth at receiver. The last couple years, whether Green or whoever, even going into the JT Daniels year, a lot of the commentary was outside of maybe the one or two. Is there enough depth at receiver? Are these receivers underachieving? Bryce Whedon dropped some key passes in big games. Fans were kind of angered at receivers, and that was kind of an underrated angst amongst all the other problems that maybe Mountaineer Nation had with the football team. This year, not only do you get Traylon Ray, now a sophomore, Preston Fox still with eligibility, stepping up after a big year last year. Hudson Clement, new number, but again, stepping up after a big year last year. He's not done it for a full season. He's a favorite of Garrett Green. Obviously, Cole Taylor now another year with the program. Many thought last year was a one-and-done transfer. He is still back with the program. That's what happens when you win. Players get excited and don't want to linger and stick around. And then you add in Jaden Bray, who's been in the Big 12 championship game quite a bit throughout his career. He has that experience. And Justin Robinson, even from Mississippi State, coming in as a big body, potential deep threat for the Mountaineers. So they are deeper at receiver. I don't think if we were doing the show a year ago, I could even have named you that many impact receivers that have already detailed. And I didn't even get to if they use Rodney Gallagher as a receiver or on defense at nickel and maybe sprinkle him here or there. There's depth there. That's part of why Rodney may have to go more towards the defense to play. So that's a big advantage to Garrett Green. I've written about him needing to be more accurate ad nauseum, but he has a lot more weapons to benefit him and to kind of dish the rock out to. And CJ is still there too. Everybody, including myself, thought, okay, Jaheim's emerging. Wish the best to CJ in the future to turn his career and get back to form, but he's not going to be the number two. And it's kind of a two-headed monster. They're kind of the 1A to 1B. They're both there going into the season, figuring they're both going to get the rock. That's a big deal. All of these things didn't occur going into week one last year at this point in fall camp last year. And of course, a major difference too in the past couple of years, they know who QB1 is. We kind of figured it was Garrett Green last year. We kind of figured it was JT Daniels the year before. It was kind of a charade, us in media. But Neil Brown did not announce his starter until going into week one each of the last 2 years. Some even thought maybe 3 years ago it was up in the air. And this year, it's not even a talking point. It's clearly Garrett Green. That's a big difference too.
It's clearly Garrett Green. It's clearly Jaheim White, C.J. Donaldson behind him. It's
right.
There's a lot less question marks with, especially on the offensive side going into this season.
Yeah.
Obviously, with Zach Frazier gone, is Brandon Yates going to be able to step up?
That's a big deal. Yeah.
That's a huge hole to replace. But the line still looks solid. And then, like you talked about, the receiving court, they have a lot of depth. My only question is it going to be a collective effort, or is there going to be a definitive number one? Is Hudson Clement going to emerge as that number one?
That is a thought, because all the guys I mentioned are more number 2s, 3s on their previous teams. None of them have big numbers with where they came from, just kind of quality, great play that could really help and add depth. But there maybe isn't that WR1 unless maybe it's Hudson Clement. I mean, he would be the guy that knows the plays. He's become obviously a favorite of Garrett Green. Any of those transfer additions could be that guy. Devin Carter was supposed to be the guy last year. That didn't really work out.
A lot more options. That's all that matters right now. They can figure out wide receiver one when they play the games.
Yeah, right. And you lose EJ Horton, who's another one. But some of the additions last year didn't pan out receiver-wise. So as you're talking about guys having to emerge, Preston Fox had to emerge, Traylon Ray had to emerge. Going into the year last year, if somebody would have told Neil Brown, Devin Carter's not going to have a better year than he had at NC State, and EJ Horton's not going to really be the impact guy you want him to. He'll get in the end zone once or twice. That's it. I'm sure Neil in his heart of hearts would have said, we are in trouble, because he wasn't figuring Preston Fox would do what he did. He wasn't figuring Hudson Clement. Most of the fans didn't even know who Hudson Clement was. And they didn't figure Traylon Ray would have that kind of impact as a freshman. They were intentionally kind of not putting pressure on Rodney. So a lot of pieces that people would not have been able to talk about on shows like this a year ago today ended up stepping up for the Mountaineers. Others could as well. But I do want to flip it here before we round out the show. Again, Mountaineer Report here with WV Sports Now, our debut episode as we shake out the kinks of this show. And also, we will have a fancy graphic for you. We will have some graphics here on the video. We will likely be available everywhere you get your podcasts as well. But right now, doing it here just on YouTube, Mike Asti, Ethan Bock, and Ethan's the defense. I mean, there's depth on offense. Garrett Green should be better, should be more accurate. Wyatt Milam's up for all these awards that Frazier was a year ago. The line's not going to nearly be what it was when you have two NFL guys. There's going to be some problems, but they should score points. All these guys have more experience. There's even more talent there. On defense, though, you lose Beanie, you lose Lee Copa, you lose some pieces. You have less depth at different parts of that defense. Reed Carrico's there, but not necessarily the experience, even though he was at Ohio State. They just don't have the depth that maybe you'd want defensively to really win a Big 12. They got to have a lot of things go right. Aubrey Burke's got to be better than he was. He got to have a full healthy year. He got to fit into more spots on the defense than what he was doing. He's going to have a different role as kind of a more versatile Troy Polamalu, just all over the place type of safety than where he fit in before. What are your thoughts defensively? Is there a weakness there? Is that the problem for you? What are you looking for from the defense, and what part of that defense?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are, if there's anything to be concerned about, it's the defensive side.
Yeah.
For this upcoming season. I do like the secondary. I think replacing Benny Bishop, West Virginia staff did, I think, the best they could.
Best they could. Yeah. Right.
You retain Aubrey Burks. You don't lose him to the portal.
Yeah.
It seemed like West Virginia early on with Neil Brown had trouble retaining the secondary players. But you keep Aubrey for another year.
Yeah.
And then I like the linebacker core, like just like Trey Lathan, Ben Cutter, just the the potential they have, just if they all can stay together. D-line, I have a question. It's a question mark for me. But it's just going to be interesting. That's the biggest question mark of this team is especially the defensive side of the ball. But I think the secondary's solid. I think it's similar to last season. And then the linebackers, they have potential.
I do think the secondary is going to be better than people think. I don't know if I'd go solid, but everyone's talking about the secondary being a weakness of this team. You mentioned it. Yeah, you lose Beanie, and nobody figured Beanie would do what he did last year, and you're never going to replace a consensus All-American. I mean, that's a high bar that Brown even said, like, don't put that on these guys. But they bring in multiple DBs with the exact same experience that Beanie had coming to West Virginia a year ago, again, in Garnet Hollis and Jaheim Joseph, who know each other and have kind of been working together to get to this point. They do add pieces there, and everybody just pull up anything on X or Twitter from December, and Aubrey Burks was gone. The burner counts would tell you Aubrey Burks was gone. He's still there, and he has a different role, as I said. We're going to still learn more about it, but it'll be a little different, more on him if he's healthy, but could even be more of an impact guy that PFF may love even more. So him still being there is a big deal. I do think the linebacker position is one to really watch. They didn't have depth last year, all the injuries. Ben Cutter had to step up as a freshman. More experience with those guys. Trey Lathan now is healthy again. He only got a few games in last year. Obviously, we know what happened to him. And then I wrote about this too. I think Josiah Trotter could be that stud that nobody saw at all play last year. He got hurt before the season, out for the year. A lot of high hopes in him at this point a year ago. Neil Brown almost cried when he made that announcement. I believe it was last spring. I don't think he even made it to the fall, actually. But that's a guy that they didn't have at all, didn't play a down. So it's almost like you're recruiting him now, and he's part of the team now, but he knows the lay of the land. So that's a major position. They can't afford injuries like what happened last year. They can't figure that would happen again, and they're going to be fine. D-line probably is, again, one to look at, like Sean Martin and those guys. Do they need to give more than they've been giving? How do you evaluate that spot for the defense? That'll definitely be a big deal, and we'll learn a lot more, of course, as fall camp unfolds. We talked to Brown. We talked to the coaches. I talked to some of these players. We got all of that on the site for you, and we will keep touching on the football team through fall camp, the basketball team through their tour of Italy. what else happens with the basketball team. Ethan has made it clear there's roster spots still up for grabs. So we'll see what they do there. Will they ever add a big? Will they be the smallest team in the conference? Will that work out? Will they be entertaining at least? I think they're going to be entertaining. We'll see how many games they actually win. And then what happens through the off seasons for the baseball program, the rest of the Mountaineer Nation, and even the women's basketball program as they're coming off of the best season in program history and another year of Mark Kellogg. So maybe we'll talk some Mountaineer hoops on the women's side as well. That was Ethan Bock. I'm Mike Asti. That'll do it for this debut episode of the Mountaineer Report here on WVSN, and we will have at least a few of these each week, certainly during fall camp. A lot to touch on as well, a lot more to dive into. So we're not going to make this elongated shows like what I'm used to. We're going to make these short and concise for you guys to digest, and we're going to do as many of these as we can with a lot to talk about after, as Ethan put it, kind of a ho-hum off season, probably good for the program. I don't know, great for media, but I enjoyed the break. I enjoyed the calm, and now the storm is about to hit.